The crackling roar of plasma tore through Astra's crystalline sky, followed by the agonized screams of thousands of souls as their fragile energy shields shredded like tattered paper. I alone, standing calm amid the maelstrom, felt each sonic blow strike my chest. Metal snapping, crystal fracturing, blood and pure water spraying in ghostly turquoise arcs. Beyond the viewport, the void shuddered under the onslaught of 27 dark swarm, dreadnought shulking steel monstrosities, whose deadly beams extinguished every ember of hope. When the final forbidden beacon ignited across space-time, I knew I had crossed the threshold of sin itself, begging humanity, the executioners, or Savior Stowe, leap into this end-time arena. This was not merely a battle. It was a merciless verdict on the weak and the ultimate test of faith. The red warning ignite. I remember the first moment I heard the alarm shriek through the silent stillness of the mining outpost. Blinding red lights danced across every screen, turning the crystal walls into a sea of burning fire. My chest tightened as I watched laser rangefinders slice the void, proof that our peace was under threat. Etha, one who wove this entire tale, sprang from my seat and hurried to the control center, my heart pounding in my crystalline ribs as if it would shatter. The planet Astra's normally impenetrable quiet was torn apart by the cacophony of the security system. I watched a score of technicians, each a gleaming living crystal, pale and frozen beneath the blood-red glow. Crystal Hum, the youngest operator in the room, leaned over her console, eyes glued to the scanning display. I called out, "Crystal, status report." My voice rang through the sealed chamber, and everything stilled in that instant. Crystal Hum's voice quavered. "Elder, long-range sensors detect at least 27 warships entering our vicinity. They're broadcasting no friendly Halesonly plasma streaks and hostile radar signatures." My breath caught. 5,000 Astra Souls families, engineers, scientists had entrusted their lives to me. I wondered, did I have the power to protect them? The red warning lights flickered like an omen of an unseen disaster drawing near. I could feel the tremors through the crystal floorboards, even though these alarms were only digital. For us, that signal was colder than any earthquake. I strode to the main holoscreen and swept my crystalline hand across the interface. 27 black dots, each 5 times the size of our mining ship, shivered in the virtual void. In the hush before the storm, I recalled my first survey mission here, when the universe was benign and the crystal spires had never known violence. I wondered whether the name Astra, meaning light, would still be fitting if we were swallowed by this gathering darkness. The thought made me shiver. I slammed the master emergency switch, flooding the outpost with red light that jolted every nerve. Alert after alert erupted in unisonic thunk, a hammer blow to my crystalline heart. I shouted orders. Seal all auxiliary gates. Engage emergency traffic reroute. No one approaches the bunkers without my command. My directive flashed to every station, and I watched the massive crystal doors grind shut, sealing the subterranean refuge. But every defense was temporary. I glanced at the countdown timer I had programmed the moment the warning system activated. 47 hours until impact. That might be an eternity for a festival, but with thousands of lives hanging in the balance, it was briefer than a dying breath. I held my breath, feeling my crystal heartbeat echo in my mind, and a resolute chill settled over me. Then an idea struck. The forbidden frequency. I had established this protocol to ensure Astra never sent a distress call to the Deathworlders' humanity after the Galactic Council's stark warnings about their ferocity. But faced with the Dark Swarm's murderous advance, I knew I must break that sacred rule. My hand shook as I grabbed the frequency console and keyed in the forbidden override. My pulse thundered, but I forced myself calm. "Crystal, prepare transmission," I barked. She turned, hope and fear mingling in her eyes. "I've lifted the security lock, Elder. It's awaiting your final confirmation." I closed my eyes, swallowed my dread, and pressed the last key, send. Now, instantly, a desperate signal ripped into the star-strewn void, calling on the very species Astra had been forbidden to trust for centuries. I, architect of every line in this narrative, stood in the control room, watching numbers shift and the countdown pause. For a heartbeat, time froze. Then the communication tone rang out, connection established. I looked around and saw fear and flickering hope on every crystalline face. As that transmission sped away from our planet of light, I realized I had chosen a path of no return, and I vowed, once committed, I would see it through whatever the laws of nature or the cosmos might decree. The darkness advances. I could hear every breath in the control room as the display shifted from the alarm's crimson glow to a grid of icy scanning beam. In that heartbeat of silence, I felt my own pulse stall. 27 black pyramid blips materialized, each the silhouette of a gargantuan steel predator from the dark swarm. I, the architect of every thread in this tale-sense terror, rippled through the crystalline bodies of the young technicians. Their eyes flickered with shock before locking onto their holoscreens, as if seeking refuge in data. Elder, they're moving into attack formation. Crystal Hum's voice trembled, her face illuminated by rows of pale green radar pings. I stepped closer, my gaze fixed on the virtual projection. Dark swarm warships arrayed in twin columns, prow pointed straight at our colony. I inhaled deeply, forcing calm beneath the storm of panic. The alarm siren throbbed like an orchestral prelude to disaster. Crystal, zoom in on each vessel, I commanded. Catalog their armament-heavy plasma cannons, energy shields, and calculate potential damage output. She nodded, fingers dancing over the translucent interface. Lines of enormous figures scrolled across the display. Plasma yield per shot, projectile velocity, shield integrity. I wondered if Astromy Radiant Creation could endure such onslaught. Beside her, Lyra, the second technician, keyed the comm link. Elder, civilians have been evacuated to the bunkers, but surface security is minimal. Her tone was brittle, like wind through frozen shards. I offered a curt nod, chest tight. Good. Maintain order underground. The greatest danger will be at the main gate. Turning to the team, I barked, "How many anti-projectile drones remain? We only have a dozen. Deploy them now." Chaos erupted. Technicians darted about, arming drones and plotting defensive grids. I wondered if this was their first true encounter with war. Crystal limbs shook as they obeyed. Shock and duty burned in their crystalline veins. Pride and regret warred within Mepride at their steadfastness. Regret that they were never meant to be warriors. Outside, the first plasma shockwave struck our outer shields with a shrill crack. My eyes snapped to the incoming bolt on screen as it punched through our primary barrier in seconds. A pale blue flare flickered, then died, leaving behind sizzling shards of residual energy. I held my breath, then keyed the command. Activate secondary shield, frequency full power. A triumphant chime sounded, the new energy barrier blooming around the control center in a protective azure dome. I exhaled relief. Though it would hold only a fraction of the force, it bought precious seconds. I glanced at the countdown clock. 46 hours, 58 minutes. Time stretched and slowed. Every passing second felt like a minute. Dark Swarm's assault was not merely frontal. Scouting drones darted ahead, lancing tiny lasers at our sensor arrays, sowing interference. I roared, "Electronic Defense Squad, positions! Engage emergency encryption protocols." They scrambled to upload the new codes. The lasers snapped harmlessly into static. I allowed myself a grim smile. Astra's nature was peaceful, but when threatened, they could fight back. From my holo console, I monitored the rapidly shifting tactical metrics: hit probability, projected losses, breach likelihood. I turned to the colleague at my side. "Maintain the initial defense for 30 minutes. The Earth Fleet's counterstrike will arrive in time." His eyes shone with hope. I knew the sequence I had written. As long as our allies entered hyperspace within 48 hours, salvation would come. The tension climaxed when the second volley of plasma slammed into a mining module near the habitation ring. The shock rattled the crystalline floor, showering fine glass dust and glowing motes. I sprang up, voice resonant. "Emergency! Engage anti-vibration seals. Everyone brace." Bulkheads trembled as though they might collapse, but the seismic dampeners roared to life. I watched as attendants secured walkway braces and guided crew away from reinforced panels. Another alarm crackled through the intercom. Elder Interceptor Drone 7 has been destroyed. Lyra's anguish rang clear. I whirled, steel in my eyes. Launch backup drones fill that gap. Drones 8, 9, and 10 move to Sector South. Focus all fire on that flagship. Heat pulsed through the room as though hell itself bore down. Yet I forced my calm, issuing each directive to stave off chaos. I leaned over the emergency reaction console. A single red button glowed untouched. I hesitated for a heartbeat before pressing it. The warning tone swung to a rapid, staccato rhythm. I faced the team, voice steady but fierce. We've held the line for 30 minutes, excellent. Now hold fast until reinforcements arrive. The siren persisted. The red lights pulsed without relent. Yet in our crystalline eyes burned the unbreakable spirit, the forbidden threshold. I could still feel every shallow breath echoing in my crystalline mind as the final plea I sent raced outward through the endless void. The red warning lights dimmed to nothing, replaced by stark white letters blinking on the hollow display. Transmitting, no response. Silence answered me instantly, slicing through the control room like a blade. My heart, though, forged of living crystal fell as if it stopped altogether. No reply. Crystal Hum whispered beside me, her voice quavering, eyes wide with confusion and dread. I turned and grasped her delicate hand in my own shimmering limb, forcing a mask of calm I no longer felt. The ancient statutes, the prohibitions of the Galactic Council, once etched deeply into our collective memory, had become hollow lines in a distant archive. Now the fate of 5,000 Astra Souls families, engineers, scientists, French hung in the balance as the Dark Swarm's iron fist squeezed tighter with each passing moment. Yet my cry for aid to the Council was met only with icy apathy. I watched my emergency beacon drift slowly into oblivion, each data packet swallowed by impenetrable walls of political encryption. Human frequencies are strictly forbidden. The Council's edict had declared on the day I first set foot on this crystalline world. Any contact with the Death Worlders constitutes a grave violation, threatening the natural equilibrium. I could still recite the exact wording from the highest security dossier. Breaking communication protocols with human operatives is an offense punishable by exile. But here I sat, in the heart of my crystal spire, feeling the entire structure tremble with every monstrous plasma discharge from the Dark Swarm's warships. I asked myself, which natural balance matter more than our very existence? Which cosmic statute holds greater worth than preserving life itself? In that suspended moment, the formal holographic conference with the Council's delegates seemed like mere theater. I replayed the President's chilling announcement in my head. We cannot render assistance in time. We cannot violate the treaty. His words rang out like a judge's gavel, sentencing my world with bureaucratic finality. I understood their fear-countless chapters of galactic history bore testament to humanity's savage wars, to the Death Worlders' uncanny ability to wage relentless, unrepentant destruction. They feared what this species represented, a power refined over millennia of survival on a harsh, war-torn world. Yet I could not accept that dread as justification for condemning my people. Fear may be prudent, but it cannot stand as a shield for the innocent. Resolute, I strode from the main control chamber into the secret frequency Volta, dimly lit sanctuary, where the forbidden frequency console lay dormant beneath reinforced security plating. Pale yellow warning icons flickered ominously. Forbidden frequencito, not use. I paused before the interface, feeling the crystal in my chest pulse in time with my racing thoughts. Summoning every shred of courage, I laid my palm on the override panel. A soft chime echoed through the vault, confirming that the system's lethal safeguards had unlocked. In my crystalline veins, a searing determination blazed like an undying flame. I whispered to myself, if I do not break this law, I will doom us all to oblivion. Immediately, the holoscreen sprang to life. displaying the labyrinthine sequence of digits, symbols, and encoding matrices that comprise the banished frequency. Each character represented not just electromagnetic instructions, but fathomless treaties, interspecies distrust, and cultural taboos woven across countless civilizations. My throat tightened as I guided my trembling fingers to the final key. In that instant, a surge of raw energy rippled through the Consolian electromagnetic tsunami, tearing through encrypted barriers. The signal erupted outward, a blinding pulse racing faster than light, shattering the digital void in its wake. I stood motionless, mesmerized by the beam of pure intent slicing through the cosmos, while overhead, the crystal structure shuddered under the dark swarm's savage bombardment. Crystal Hum burst into the vault, eyes ablaze with equal parts awe and terror. "Elder, you've done the impossible," she managed to choke out. I inclined my head, the weight of destiny settling on my shoulders. "I have done what was necessary," I replied, voice resolute yet tinged with sorrow. The realization of my transgression washed over me. I had defied the Galactic Council, shattered the highest decree, and in doing so had risked unparalleled consequences, political, military, existential. Yet nothing could outweigh the agony of passive waiting while my world faced annihilation. Moments later, the vault's main display flashed two words in triumphant green: transmission success. My fingers flew over the logging interface, meticulously recording the crucial data, the call from Earth. I stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Thunder as the sensor grid flickered out of hyperspace's chaotic warp and into sharp focus. Stars shimmered like distant embers before the comms panel erupted in a crisp alarm. Emergency signal received from Astra Colony, Sector 7B9. Lieutenant Reed's voice cracked through the speakers, halting every hand at their console. I architect of every beat in this saga felt, my crystalline heartbeat quickened, each pulse resonating through my veins like an urgent drum. On the main holoscreen, the encrypted distress beacon decoded itself into stark English text. "This is the Astra mining colony in Sector 7B9. We are under attack by a hostile fleet. We have no weapons. We have children. Please help us." The plea played in a hushed, trembling female tone that carried across the void from a civilization of living crystal, fragile against the endless dark. I paused the auto-transcription and played it back in full no glitches, no sign of tampering. "This was genuine, born of desperate hope, sir," Reed murmured, brow furrowed. "The Galactic Council's 2-century-old isolation edict forbids human intervention. We'd be violating our own highest treaty." I met her gaze, calm but resolute. "Precisely," I replied. "But when innocent lives hang in the balance, morality must trump protocol. If we do nothing, we betray our own conscience." My words drew a taut silence across the deck. I waved over to the AI core. "Atlas, run a full weapons and formation scan on the Dark Swarm fleet. Provide engagement options in 30 seconds." Instantly, the holographic avatar of Atlas, a ghostly blue silhouette, materialized and unfolded the tactical display. 27 hostile vessels arrayed in 2 parallel assault waves, each wave 5 dense ranks deep. Atlas's voice rang out evenly. "Based on current trajectory, the Dark Swarm will reach the distress coordinates in 47 hours. At maximum sustainable speed, Thunder requires 38 hours to arrive via direct course." I nodded, resolve coiling in my chest. "Excellent. Then we'll shave off transit time with a flash strike maneuver. Divert from the direct vector execute, a short-range phase jump to the nearest safe node, then surge straight toward the colony." My finger tapped the engine control panel, shifting the warp drives into burst pulse Modia high-risk, high-yield overclock that promised a 20% speed boost at the price of extreme thermal stress. The engine meters flickered red, warning of potential overload. I whispered, "Engage," and the Thunder rumbled as its gravitic coils flared. Hands clasped behind my back, I eyed the nav map. The countdown clock ticked down, 37 hours, 45 minutes until intercept. Every minute felt like a crystal shard piercing glass. In my mind, I weighed the stakes: treaty violation, diplomatic fallout, possible council sanctions. Yet, beyond the obsidian expanse out there, I knew brightest hopes lay with the trembling children of Astra. "Prepare medical convoys," I ordered. "Load triage kits, field surgical units, nutrient rations enough for 2-0 non-combatants." Across the deck, the medical support team acknowledged, their hollow icons turning vivid green. Reed studied the secure comms console. "Sir, should we forward a report to Earth Command first?" she asked, voice tight. I shook my head. "No, everything routes through me. I won't let bureaucratic hesitation cost lives. We'll override Central Command if necessary." I switched to an encrypted channel, my tone crisp. "This is Dreadnought Thunder. By direct order of Captain Bluesong, all isolation protocols are hereby rescinded. Initiate Operation Thunderstrike. Emergency response to Astra Colony distress signal." With a final keystroke, I handed Reed the transmit command. She tapped it, and the comm array hummed as the priority signal leapt into the void. A soft vibration ran through the deck, plating the call for aid was on its way. I stepped back, inhaled deeply, and lifted my gaze to the star-scattered viewport. Somewhere beyond those twinkling points of light, human vessels would slice through darkness en route to our crystal world ally. "Time is our only true ally," I said quietly, though every era board could hear. "If we maintain unity and refuse to falter mid-course, then even a miracle remains possible." My voice rose with conviction. "We must seize every second. We will arrive in time and show that our strength lies not in treaties, but in the compassion that drives us to protect the helpless." The deck fell into focused motion. Engineers monitoring reactor output, gunners prepping defensive arrays, navigators fine-tuning the phase jump coordinates. In that controlled frenzy, I sensed the heartbeat of humanity itself, determined, empathetic, unbound by fear of reprisal. Here, in the company of steel and light, we tethered our fate to that fragile crystal colonian, to the ideal that no law stands above the sanctity of life. The countdown ticked onward. 37 hours, 30 minutes. And with every passing pulse, hope burned a little brighter against the night. The covert strike. I stood motionless in the command center as the Dark Swarm's landing craft deployed one after another. The interior hatch lights flickered like cold embers. Their pale glow refracted through the translucent crystal corridors. Pressing against the main holoscreen, I watched each vessel's airlock open, the metallic landing legs folding out and locking with harsh, mechanical clicks. Heavy servos hissed, and the first footfalls of armored soldiers pounded against the crystalline floor, the sound echoing like metal blades slicing through the air. Tiny fractures spidered across the crystal surface, and glittering shards scattered as the ground beneath our feet trembled an unmistakable warning of the wrath about to be unleashed. Alarms and sirens erupted simultaneously throughout the facility, their urgent shriek mingling with external warning klaxons. My heart leaped. The civilian population had already evacuated to the deep subterranean refuges. Over the intercom, I barked my directive. Unlock the eastern egress, move in small squads, maintain formation, and do not abandon anyone. A tide of crystal-bodied citizens surged through the corridor, their panic-stricken faces illuminated by the flashing red lights. I caught sight of a small child clinging to her mother's hand, her trembling legs stumbling through a haze of glittering debris. Steeling myself, I vowed to sustain their courage, no matter how fierce the onslaught. On the surveillance grid, security cameras captured the silhouettes of Dark Swarm infantridal, imposing figures in obsidian armor, energy rifles cradled at ready. Their bioscanners swept every inch of exposed crystal, harvesting data on temperature, hardness, and refractive index. This apparatus was more insidious than any plasma cannon. It could discriminate combatants from civilians, ensuring targeted elimination. Frowning, I instructed Crystal Hum to track the squad movements in real time, log every meter advanced, prioritize any unit carrying non-combatants. Her fingers flew across the interface, freezing and tagging hostile vectors as they crept forward. Moments later, a battery of energy drills appeared at the far end of the chamber, bright arcs of coherent laser carving through centuries-old crystal. Brilliant shards rained down as the drills bored small portals, then rammed through to breach the inner bulwark. I roared, "Deploy EMP drones, focus fire on those drill arrays." Instantly, a swarm of rotary drones launched, their twin rotors whirring furiously as they projected electromagnetic pulses. Sparks danced through the air as each pulse shorted out enemy equipment, and muted detonations stung the ear. For a fleeting heartbeat, progress halted, but the dark swarm recalibrated in seconds, their systems adapting to the interference and resuming their assault. I checked the timer. The drills were fully operational again, almost before I blinked. My eyes flicked to the countdown clock, 36 hours, 15 minutes remaining. The numeric display glowed ominously, each second pulsing in relentless red. Around me, the wailing sirens and recorded pleas from the underground refuge blended into a tormenting chorus. I pounded the console. "Crystal, initiate the labyrinth protocol. Engage the dynamic wall sequence." Hydraulics groaned as entire corridors shifted and rotated, morphing into a living maze. Walls of opalescent crystal slid into place, shortening long passageways into dizzying networks of twisting turn. I saw hope flare in my people's eyes. They would find safety in numbers, and the enemy would waste valuable minutes navigating the labyrinth's convolutions. Deep beneath the surface, 5,000 Astra souls scrambled through the shifting passages. Their footsteps clattered on the resonant floors, echoing around corners before vanishing into new corridors. Each intersection sparked anxiety every wrong turn, threatened to strand them under the enemy's boots. Over the comm system, I called out, "Stay calm. Follow the holographic guide beams. Do not backtrack." Faint blue arrows flickered along the walls, guiding the refugees toward the final safe chamber. I prayed the labyrinth's complexity would delay the invaders long enough for our reinforcements to arrive. Returning to the control station, I clenched the crystalline keyboard as if drawing strength from its solid cold. My hand hovered over the biometric monitor, tracking the heart rates and stress levels of the sheltered populace. I saw our protective drone count dwindle, only 20 remained online. My internal monologue raced, "Just a little longer." I monitored the collective vitals in real time. Each spike in adrenaline lit up the display like warning flares. The flimsy glow of the holo status panel painted my features in ghostly blue, reminding me how dire our situation had become. Every breath, every heartbeat for those trapped below depended on the slender thread of human resolve. Above it all, a solitary beam of hope pierced the gloom, the faint promise of Earth's fleet slicing through distant hyperspace. I steeled my resolve and placed a trembling finger on the emergency override symbol. "May fortune favor us," I whispered, voice steely and determined. "And may we hold the line until dawn." The gears of fate were in motion. In the labyrinth's shifting shadows, in the vaults of shattered crystal, and on the horizon of the void, our destiny awaited, and not one of us would falter before the tremors of this covert strike were silenced forever. The crystal maze. I stepped back behind the sealed emergency door as the tonnage of crystal walls began to shift, groaning like iron against iron in the cavern's depths. Raising my hand, I tapped the auxiliary control panel to initiate the emergency maze protocol and automated labyrinth system that my engineers and I had devised long ago to buy time against invading forces. In an instant, the moving walls writhed as though alive, slicing the corridors into a riot of winding passageways. No path remained straight. Every route branched into serpentine twists and dead end. I stood on the glittering floor, my eyes reflecting the red alert lights, and watched the maze rise like a living organism, its every turn a strategic chord in the symphony of defense. Drawing a deep breath, I turned to the three-dimensional tactical display on the holoscreen before me. A swarm of red blips marked the dark swarm's progress on the upper levels, while clusters of blue icons tracked the civilian Astra, streaming toward the deeper refuge tunnels. I pressed the Randomized Paths button, instructing the system to periodically resequence the movable walls. The corridors would shift unpredictably, generating countless permutations of dead ends and shortcuts that our foes could never memorize. My mind raced. If each rerouting cost the enemy even a few minutes, we would gain those precious minutes again and again. In that moment, I felt the power of our crystal structure counter-intrusion design come alive, a testament to every late night I had spent refining its parameters. Deep in the shelter, more than 5,000 Astra souls jostled together, their faces etched with anxiety, yet clinging to the faith that this labyrinth would safeguard them. I entered the internal traffic control node and keyed the public address. Remain calm. Follow the guiding lights to tunnels 3A and 3B. Do not turn left on a red arrow, only on green. Upon each system, ping. Halt immediately and proceed when the signal changes color. My voice echoed evenly through the twisting halls, a steady anchor amid the rattling mechanics and the distant thud of invaders overhead. While the maze pulsed into action, I shifted my attention to our critical assets. On the hollow screen, I drew a series of locks around our core databanks, triggering the protocol data lockdown. Instantly, all mineral extraction logs and operational secrets were sealed under quantum-level encryption, inaccessible from any external port. I had preloaded the system with decoy datasets stored on separate nodes, bogus troves, designed to lure any intruder's curiosity. When the Dark Swarm inevitably breached the server chamber, they would find only mundane manifests and empty archives. Meanwhile, the true core data would remain safe, entombed in the facility's deepest vaults. My focus then switched to supply logistics. I activated supply distribution across the maze. Dozens of stockpiles of rations, purified water, and medical kits were strategically stashed throughout the corridors. A network of virtual waypoints guided citizen groups to the nearest cache. Each time a squad encountered an intersection, embedded beacons logged their position and recalibrated the light signals to draw them to fresh supplies. I took pride in the precision. Even in panic, the Astra could find nourishment and aid, reducing chaos and the risk of stampedes. But I had saved my most cunning mechanism for last, the false lead protocol. On the hollow mapping console, I overlaid the current wall positions and marked several routes as hot zones, phantom treasure caches filled with decoy technology. As enemy squads activated their internal cameras and muffled comms, they would be irresistibly drawn along those corridors. Convinced they had struck gold, they would pour reinforcements into those traps, neglecting the real refuges and resources elsewhere. Each false lead would sow confusion, forcing the Dark Swarm to scrabble through dead ends and expend precious time catching up with moving sections of the maze. All the while, I kept one cautious eye on the countdown clock. 30 hours, 45 minutes, until our human allies should arrive. Time pressed down on me like the weight of a collapsing star. I whispered, "Just a few more hours and the tide will turn." I could feel the crystalline rhythm of my heartbeat synchronized with my resolve. My very veins of living crystal seemed to vibrate with that promise of salvation. Above our subterranean fortress, the Dark Swarm's plasma, salvos, and energy charges tore into the crystalline ground. The tremors reverberated through every corridor, rattling joints and sending shards of fractured crystal cascading like rain. I could not hear Crystal Hum's voice through the cacophony, but I sensed her concentration as she monitored seismic sensors, confirming the impact intensities. I remained silent, fingertips brushing the hollow screen, eyes flicking from tremor graphs to wall movement logs. At any moment, I was ready to trigger the next shifter to lock down a newly threatened sector. With every cycle of the maze, I noted in the tactical readout how many enemy clusters took wrong turns. Teams spent minutes backtracking or had to wait for the mechanical walls to cycle open again. Some deployed portable cutting tools, but each breach point required time to align and unsheath, only to be met by another shifting barrier. The 3D overlay lit up with their squandered minutes or expanding margin of safety. I dared a brief grin. This was why I designed the Crystal Mazenot merely as a wall against bullets, but as a demonstration of intelligence triumphing over brute force. Standing in the control hub, I gazed upon the living tapestry of shifting walls, fractures, and corridor realignments. Every interplay of light and shadow on those crystalline surfaces testified to our ingenuity. Before dawn, the human fleet's cutting-edge vessels would burst through the outer atmosphere to deliver relief. Until that moment, this ever-shifting labyrinth, the last bastion of asteroid, would pull back the swarm. I tapped the Maze Status Report command, broadcasting the full state of the labyrinth to Tactical Command. Every wall module's position, every recorded intrusion attempt, and every supply cache status streamed outward. We were poised for the decisive phase, when the invaders were firmly ensnared and our allies arrived to break the siege in earnest. In my living crystal heart, I swallowed the weight of anxiety and replaced it with a fierce belief. The crystal maze was waking, and we would endure its trials until the metal wings of humanity tore through the darkness, carrying the light of hope back to those trembling souls far below. The illicit flight. I still recall every decisive second when humanity aboard the dreadnought Thunder cast aside all statutes to answer the Crystal Colony's desperate call. Standing at the command chair, I peered through the reinforced viewport at the orbital map. A streak of cerulean light surging toward the distress coordinates in Sector 7B9. I knew full well this maneuver violated Article 42 of the Galactic Treaty, strictly forbidding any human vessel from engaging the unauthorized hyperspace burst protocol beyond its designated corridors. But with the Galactic Treaty strictly, lives of 5,000 Astra souls hanging in the balance, no alternative remained. Calmly but resolutely, I issued the command. Engage unauthorized hyperspace protocol. Immediately, klaxons blared throughout the control deck, alerting the engine room that we were entering high-stress, maximum thrust mode. Gauges flickered red. Plasma chamber pressure, combustion temperature, shield integrity, and warp drive wear indicators all climbed toward critical thresholds. I gripped the command seat, feeling the golden determination pulse through my crystalline vein sun, intertwining of steely resolve and desperate hope. As the hyperspace burst engines roared to life, Thunder trembled like a titanic beast thrashing free of its chains. Brilliant arcs of azure energy flared beyond the viewport, painting the deck in shifting shades of blue-white. I heard the whine of power conduits straining at the surge, as though any instant might tear them asunder under the overwhelming load. Yet I would not allow any engineer to abort the burn. I barked, "Maintain burst. Do not cut power, not even a fraction of a second." My voice rang above the deafening engine crescendo, its insistence outmatching every alarm. Through the roaring drive field, I glimpsed the hyperspace countdown. 16 hours, 42 minutes remaining in our slipstream window, each flashing digit hammered like a drumbeat. "Faster, faster," I whispered. "Hold on. Just a little longer lives depend on us." Despite our breakneck acceleration, I could see on the three-dimensional orbital chart that the Dark Swarm had detected our unauthorized burst and dispatched probe ships in pursuit. I tapped the tactical console, activate countermeasures array. Instantly, spherical electronic disruption drones deployed from Thunder's ventral ports, flooding the chase corridor with a cascade of jamming pulses. I watched enemy sensors flicker and stutter, their lock-ons dissolving into static. A satisfied grin crept across my face as I muttered, "Let them burn through their munitions chasing phantoms." Plasma exhaust haze drifted across the control room even as I keyed in a fine-tuned vector adjustment. WTL IATE thruster vector 0.07. The vessel shuddered as we executed a micro-course correction, generating a low-frequency acoustic shear that further scrambled hostile targeting arrays. More importantly, it masked Thunder's signature, buying us precious hours of stealth before they could re-establish a lock. Beside me, Lieutenant Reed offered a cautious note her eyes, reflecting a blend of worry and unwavering trust. As we neared the end of our hyperspace slip, multiple warnings erupted on the main console. Hyperspace integrity failing. The drive's blue status bar sputtered, replaced by a pulsing red gauge. I leveled my gaze at the engineer seated at the warp helm. Calmly, I ordered, "Bypass safety lock, prioritize exit sequence." His fingers flew across the override toggles and data paths compiled in a blur. The engine screamed an octave as the field collapsed, and a blinding flash of light cleaved the darkness. Thunder convulsed violently, then shuddered to a sudden halt in real space, its hull battered but intact. Blinking back the afterimage of hyperspace, I stepped forward and peered through the viewport. A tapestry of stars greeted use untouched, silent witnesses to our triumph. Beyond the turbulence of re-entry, I glimpsed the shimmering speck of Astra Colony hanging in the void, a solemn reminder of unfinished duty. I tapped the helm, stabilized sublight engines, run debris scan. Across the deck, alarms fell silent for a heartbeat before the shield harmonics engaged, wrapping Thunder in a protective energy envelope just as the last plasma volley from pursuing swarm ships detonated against our outer shell. At that moment, I accepted the consequences of my choice. I was now a fugitive of interstellar law, branded a rogue commander for defying the hyperspace regulations. Bounties might be placed on my vessel the instant we left secure space. Yet, as I turned to the comm panel and saw the waiting signal from Astra Colony, I thought, let this transgression become the precedent of compassion between species. I broadcast my directive. All hands, prepare for approach. Engage sublight drive LS7. Lock focus on colony marker. Minutes stretched as we closed the final vector to the crystalline world. The void between us silent, save for the steady hum of life support and the measured cadence of our combined pulse rates. On the tactical overlay, a single red blip shimmered closer, our promised rescue arriving in time to stave off annihilation. With a steady hand, I pressed the final command. Deploy navigation beacon. Reinforce forward shields to 110%. A surge of cerulean light washed over the command deck, a signal, both to us and to Astra, that the path home had been reforged. Exhausted but triumphant, I activated the ship-wide intercom. Crew of Thunder, we did it. We broke the law to save lives. Now prepare for the rescue phase. Your greatest mission begins. Heads turned and glassy eyes reflected that same crystalline resolve. I inhaled deeply, letting the gravity of our act settle in my soul. Despite the risk of pursuit, despite the ignominy of violating the highest edicts, I, author of this crusade, harbored no regrets. For in that illicit flight, we had affirmed the paramount truth that life, above all, must be defended. And with that conviction burning in every heart aboard Thunder, we carried our people toward the dawn of a new alliance zone, born not of treaties, but of unwavering humanity. The stellar showdown. I sank into the command chair as the tactical screens flickered with infrared signatures, dozens of deep crimson pips heralding the Dark Swarm's battle formations in high orbit. In that moment, the weight of our illicit hyperspace leap pressed down on every fiber of my crystalline sinews. A single hesitation, and we would fail to save 5,000 innocent lives. There was no time for restraint. I struck the console with decisive force, issuing my first order. Prepare gravity pulse arrays to full charge pattern Omega. A low rumble shook the ship as the gravity projectors spun up, their resonant hum vibrating through Thunder's crystalline hull like distant thunder. Each pulse generator cycled through intricate harmonics, weaving an invisible lattice of force fields poised to compress thin, shatter any matter that dared breach our perimeter. Moments later, I barked the command I had been waiting for. Fire! The first gravity pulse erupted into space as a translucent orb of shimmering force. It hurtled toward the largest Dark Swarm dreadnought in our field of fire. Through the viewport, I watched the energy sphere bloom in sapphire hues before slamming into the enemy vessel's midsection. The enormous ship convulsed, its engines rupturing in a cascade of silver blue light, splitting like a monolithic crystal cleft in two. Shards of twisted metal and ionized gas sprayed outward in a brilliant meteor shower, glinting against the star-speckled void. Time seemed to stretch as I set my sights on the next targets. Without hesitation, I commanded, target thrusters on the 3 closest escorts repeat fire pattern Gamma. 3 precisely aimed pulses launched in rapid succession. The second gravity orb struck a cruiser's engine block, shearing it off from the main hull. Its crew pods shattered and tumbled into the void, sealing the ship's fate. The third pulse hammered a frigate's fusion core, sending shockwaves of fractured steel streaming behind the vessel like comet tails. In under 30 seconds, two of the swarm's support ships drifted helplessly, lifeless husks in the starry expanse. Every fiber of my consciousness focused on the battlefield's ebb and flow. I felt each pulse resonate through Thunder's framework, each impact echoing in my veins as though the ship and I were one. The gravity fields glowed in my vision, like twin blades cutting the cosmos itself. We were locked in 15 minutes of lethal ballet, each pulse choreographed down to the millisecond based on Astra's own tactical files. The dark swarm retaliated with a withering barrage of plasma beams, volley after crimson volley, lancing toward Thunder's prow. Our shields flared in violet arcs as the pulses struck, momentarily buckling under the onslaught before snapping back in phosphorescent bursts. I remained unflinching. Maintain formation shields 95, prepare secondary pulse, I ordered, voice calm amid the roar. The control deck's countdown timer synchronized with my commands as the application window for our next strike slid closer. 10, 9, 8. At 0, I triggered the third gravity wave. A voluminous sphere of force surged outward, and half of the swarm's remaining vessels spun uncontrollably, inertial frames locked in chaotic pirouettes. On the tactical holomap, I saw their formation fracture. Of 23 enemy vessels, 14 were now effectively incapacitated. Seizing the moment, I keyed the comm. All hands, cease fire pattern Omega switch to boarding prep. Secure prisoners alive. A ripple of relief and resolve passed through the bridge as officers acknowledged my order. In that harrowing quarter hour, humanity had demonstrated that true power lies not only in advanced technology, but in the moral courage to defend the defenseless. As the final Dark Swarm ships detonated or drifted powerless, Thunder's deck cleared for boarding operations. I inhaled deeply, bracing myself against the faint tang of superheated plasma that still filled the air. Through the viewport, fragments of obsidian black wreckage drifted past, like lost asteroids' grim trophies of our victory. Beyond them, Thunder's landing pods readied for descent, carrying medics and engineers to secure the survivors. I placed my hand on the crystalline console, feeling its steady hum of residual energy. My gaze swept across the star-dusted heavens above Astra Colony, now free from siege. A solitary thought crystallized in my mind. This is the essence of humanity when tested. We do not retreat, we charge forward. In that precious instant of quiet after the storm, I understood that the light of the Astra Colony would burn brighter, no longer alone in the cosmos. We had woven ourselves into their story, and theirs now shone as part of our testament that hope can ignite even in the blackest night. As Thunder drifted into position to deploy rescue teams, I whispered to the empty deck, "May this star-strewn battlefield stand as proof that where life trembles, humanity rises." And with that vow, I prepared to lead the charge down to the Coloniento, the heart of the living Cristalto, fulfill the promise carved by gravity waves and courage. The grand disembarkation. I lifted my gaze to the reinforced viewport as Thunder's landing craft descended like steel-winged birds into Astra's crystalline sky. Brilliant streaks of light traced the ship's landing runs, each thruster flare-painting rainbow arcs across the glass. In that suspended moment, I felt the swell of emotion I had never known before. 5,000 fragile lives poised to be saved, and I, the architect of this rescue, urging them into safety. As the landing struts made contact with the crystalline ground, I heard the metallic clank of support settling into the rock, followed by the shrill hiss of the suspension servos adjusting under load. My finger hovered over the glowing Deploy Marines button. With a firm press, I watched the heavy compartment doors burst open as a squad of armored Marines poured out in tight formation. Their reinforced exoskeletons gleamed a cool cerulean under the landing lights, each soldier stepping in lockstep to secure the perimeter and clear a path for medical vehicles and reconnaissance drones to approach the refuge entrances. Deep within the tunnels, the assembled Astra populace erupted in elation when they heard the rallying cry resound through the intercom, "No one is left behind." Children, whose eyes had reflected only fear moments before, now looked skyward with awe as they grasped their parents' hands. I keyed the master mic. All units, establish a secure perimeter. Escort priority evacuees women, children, and elders directly onto the landing deck. Thunder's Marines assembled riot shields and energy barriers in a disciplined arc of protection, forming a living wall of light to shepherd the vulnerable from the darkness into our landing base. I watched Marine Captain Moreno, our chief medical officer, sprint into the throng with a field pack slung over her shoulder. She barked instructions: place casualties here, administer triage, prepare fours. Roughly a dozen stretchers were laid out as trembling hands placed injured Astra onto them. The sharp scent of antiseptic mingled with the hiss of respirators, but it could not dampen the collective joy erupting among the rescue. Each time a wounded civilian was lifted onto a gurney, gratitude shone brighter than any medical light bracketed above. Outside the tunnel mouth, I coordinated our unmanned all-terrain rovers surveying the surrounding approach. Atlas, I said, scan the entire area once more. Any stragglers must be found. Immediately, the AI's holographic overlay glowed with a three-dimensional grid, pinpointing the last emergency beacon signal from a small group still unaccounted. My eyes flicked to the control console as a lone blip appeared in a shadowed alcove. Bravo, team move in from the south now. Within seconds, Bravo team dropped from a forward hatch in compact assault craft. They sprinted through shattered crystal and scattered debris, plasma bolts from residual swarm pods, arcing harmlessly overhead as the Marines approached. I keyed the speaker. No lethal force. Maintain standoff distance guide civilians to extraction zone. Their disciplined voice boomed through the tunnels, and from the gloom emerged the final group of Astra refugees. Each face was a study in relief tears, glinting like diamonds on crystalline cheeks as they raised trembling hands in thanks. They bowed low to the Marines, overcome by the sight of merciful saviors rather than merciless invaders. With every Astra safely aboard, I returned to the command deck and monitored the Dark Swarm survivors through the tactical holomap. Switched to Operation Capture. I ordered Reed. Almost instantly, our naval contingents bore down on the enemy remnants, deploying tractor beams and energy nets to immobilize the fleeing vessels. On the display, I watched swarm soldiers pour out of escape pods, confusion and panic in every movement as our boarding team surged in. I leaned into the viewport to witness the stunned expressions of these once feared invaders, now raising their gauntleted hands in surrender, their biometric clamps glowing to signify deactivation. I stood back from the console, eyes tracing the illuminated figures of human Marines escorting prisoners up the ramp. Each captive was bound by electromagnetic cuffs, non-lethal restraints, rendering them harmless yet breathing a visible sigh of fate. I toggled the mic. Treat prisoners in accordance with the laws of war. Preserve their lives and let them see that humanity is more than its weapons. We are mercy as well as might. My words reverberated through Thunder's corridors, and I saw resolve harden in each officer's countenance, a mixture of solemn duty and quiet pride. Below deck, medics began triaging the Astra civilians, ushering them into a warmed, well-lit recovery ward. I descended from the command pedestal and knelt beside a small crystal child trembling in Captain Moreno's arms. I placed a reassuring hand on the girl's shoulder and whispered, "You are safe now. We are here to protect you." Her wide eyes blinked once, then a fragile smile blossomed as a single crystal tear rolled down her luminescent cheek. In that moment, I realized this rescue had forged a bond between our species and unbreakable thread of shared humanity. I rose and returned to the data terminal on the bridge, inputting each evacuee's name, family grouping, and medical status. My heart swelled as the loss count read 0. With injured and healthy alike now accounted for, I triggered the ship-wide audio system, releasing a soft, uplifting melody that cut through the sterile hum of combat. The Astra, some still bound in evacuation harnesses, turned to us and offered shy waves of gratitude as they drifted toward the medical base. Through the viewport, I gazed upon the crystalline sky, the shattered battleground now framed by Thunder's hulking silhouette. The steel angel hovered its armored wings, a testament to defiance and deliverance. I allowed myself a deep exhale. We did it. Through sweat, steel, and sacrifice, we redeemed those who could not defend themselves. I tapped the comm panel to close the operation. Operation Thunderstrike Phase 2 complete. All units prepare for extraction and debrief. Echoes of contentment and relief wove through the corridors as the landing deck's hatches began to seal. As Thunder lifted from Astra's surface, a bridge of hope remained behind, proof that even in the void between stars, compassion can unite the most distant hearts. Though we had broken treaties and flouted boundary laws, we had upheld the highest law of all, to protect life wherever it flickers, however fragilely, and to stand as brothers and sisters beneath the shared light of countless galaxies. The New Alliance. The instant I stepped through the colossal crystal doors into the grand assembly hall of the Galactic Council, the cavernous chamber seemed to echo with every footfall. Sapphire-hued lamps suspended from towering arches cast their ethereal glow over hundreds of delegates, each representing a different species from across the stars, gathered around the vast circular dais. I, Elder Bluesong, reborn in human form, felt my crystalline heart pound with equal measures of pride and trepidation. Before me, 1,000 pairs of eyes fixed on the central podium as a gigantic holoscreen replayed the climactic battle at Astra Colony. Waves of applause and stunned gasps filled the room, the sapphire and deep violet light from the video flickering like a living tapestry. Delegates murmured to one another, their expressions alight with both hope and curiosity. Behind me, the holoscreen chronicled Thunder's gravity pulse barrage against the dark swarm, the shimmering plasma discharges, and the swift marine landings in the crystal caverns below. Every frame stood as testament to our resolve to protect the innocent. When the replay paused on the battered hull of Thunder, its hull plates scorched and dented, the assembly erupted in thunderous applause. I felt my hands tremble as the luminous crystal walls reflected the fractured rainbow of refracted light. Each clap felt like an affirmation that we had redefined the meaning of strength in the galaxy. I invited Elder Bluesong to the podium. His translucent form, now embodied in a human guise, exuded composed pride. He gripped the microphone firmly, then spoke in a rich, resonant voice. Honorable delegates of the Galactic Council, 3 months ago, my colony Astra teetered on the brink of annihilation. We had adhered to every regulation, yet when the dark swarm descended, hope vanished with the first plasma strike. In that darkest hour, we shattered the ancient prohibition on human contact and accepted aid from the Death Worlders. They did more than save lives. They demonstrated an eternal truth that power must be wielded to protect, not to destroy. His words rang throughout the hall, imprinting themselves upon every mind present. Next, I, Admiral Marcus, ascended the dais, gaze unwavering. I began, esteemed council members, humanity has respected the treaty for 2 centuries. Yet when we heard Astra's plea, we could not stand idle. On Earth, maritime law forbids any captain to ignore a distress call, lest they be judged unworthy. By that same principle, we accepted the risk of violating the Galactic Treaty to save those who cried out for our help. We did not come as conquerors, but as guardians. The events at Astra Colony prove we can be reliable, allies ready to defend any peaceful civilization under threat. My declaration hung in the air as the assembly fell silent. A gentle hum of debate swelled into a roar of discussion. Some delegates expressed concern about treaty infractions, while others' eyes shone with excitement at the prospect of a moral imperative outweighing ancient restrictions. I witnessed a fiery exchange between conservative council members and those representing mining colonies who had themselves suffered raids and massacres. Slowly, the tide turned in favor of granting humanity the authority to respond to emergency calls for aid. I then proposed a specific amendment to revise Article 7 of the Galactic Treaty, permitting human vessels to undertake emergency aid protocols whenever a civilized world signals distress. The vote was cast across millions of data points. When the results flashed on the grand hollow screen, ID 3.5% in favor, 12.4% opposed, and the remainder abstaining. A triumphant chime rang through the chamber. The sapphire lamps glowed brighter as cheers and relief swept the assembly. I beamed as I announced, "From this moment forward, any peaceful civilization in need may call upon humanity's protection." Today, we do more than amend a document. We reaffirm our shared duty to safeguard life. Elder Bluesong and I exchanged smiles of profound satisfaction. Within minutes, a transstellar transmission proclaimed the Council's decree to every inhabited system. In remote mining settlements on the fringes of the Arene sector, cheers broke out as news spread of the new rescue covenant. Hundreds of colonies registered to request Earth's protection under the amended treaty. Messages of gratitude flooded the Council's comm channels from the lush jungles of Viridian Prime to the barren outposts orbiting Shalkara. The foundations of a vast new alliance had been laid. I returned to Thunder's command deck, where the battle scars on its hull glinted under maintenance floodlights. No longer merely a warship, Thunder now embodied hope incarnate. I issued fresh orders. Dispatch emergency relief convoys to Astra Colony. Prepare personnel and supplies for our next protective deployment. The engines thrummed in agreement, each pulse a promise that power rightly used could bring peace rather than devastation. As I settled into the command chair, resting my hand on the crystal-paneled console, I gazed out at the starfield gleaming beyond the viewport. My soul, once bound by the rigid letter of cosmic law, now danced with boundless pride, compassion, and conviction. I, Admiral Marcus, author of this grand odyssey, whispered softly, "We are no longer merely Deathworlders. We are guardians of the weak. Let this new alliance shine across the galaxy." In that luminous glow, I knew we had forged a future where power and empathy walked hand in hand, guided by the enduring light of shared humanity.